What's up guys, I'm Mr. Audio, and if you're new to the channel, welcome. In this video, I'm going to explain the differences between polarity and phase. Because I'm sure you've all heard the phrase, flip the phase. And that terminology is actually wrong. It actually means flip the polarity or invert the polarity. And I'll get into that in a minute. So polarity and phase both have to do with the waveform. And the waveform just tells the speaker how to react. And that produces the sound that we all hear. So, when looking at a waveform, you'll notice there's a center line for the left speaker and a center line for the right speaker. That's if you have a stereo file. If it's a mono file, you'll just notice one center line. And if you zoom in really far, you'll see that anything that goes above the center line, we call that positive. And it tells the speaker to move forward. Anything that goes below the center line, we call that negative. And it tells the speaker to move backwards. And going above the center line and then below it and then back to the center line is called one cycle. The faster these cycles happen, or more frequent, the higher frequency sound is reproduced, or a higher note, in other words. And the slower these cycles happen, the lower the note, or the bassier the sound. Now let's circle back around to the phrase flipping the phase and why that really means inverting the polarity. So now picture a console, all right? I don't care what console, just any console, whatever console it is, picture it. Picture the knobs, the faders. All right. Now in that roll of controls on one of the tracks, every single track has this control. There'll be a button that has a symbol on it that looks like a 0 with a slash through it. That is your invert polarity button, or flip the phase button. When people tell you to flip the phase of a particular track, they mean press that button and it will take the polarity and invert it. Whether that's a good thing and that helps you is really up to you. This is something you're going to want to use your ears for. Visual cues can help you, but they only take you so far. Your ears will take you the rest of the way. Your ears will never lie to you. Well, maybe they will. I don't know. I'm not your ears. So all that button does is just inverts the waveform. Now phase, although it has to do with the waveform as well, just it has to do it in a different way, all right? Think of phase like left to right orientation, and think of polarity like up and down orientation, you know? Or think of this, think of phase like phases of the moon, and think of polarity like flipping over a card. I hope that helps. So phase is usually a problem in the low end and the drums. I'll explain the low end in a minute. Let's get to the drums first. So when recording drums, you have all these mics mic'd up in different ways, different amounts of space between them and the source of material that they're recording. All right, and we know sound travels at a certain speed. So it's going to reach the further away mics later than it's going to reach the mics that are really close, right? So this is called phase alignment. Aligning your phase so they're just right. So sometimes you'll have stereo mics, like stereo overheads, and you're going to want them to be the same distance away from a certain point. All right. Now, this is very dependent on the engineer, what the sound they're going for, the studio that they're in, the mics they have. So many different things depends on this. So I'm not going to get into drum recording or editing into this video. We're just talking about phase and how things could possibly affect and where you'd most likely encounter phase issues. And this all really depends on the material and the person mixing it. But I can tell you this much, when I'm editing drums, if I'm using mainly samples or even not samples, I like to make sure as many sounds as I can are telling the speaker to move forwards at the same time. I try to have as little cancellations as possible, just so that I know that the impact of every sound, and every measure, and every bar is hitting exactly as hard as it can be and sounding the way that I want it to be. So not a lot of phase issues happen in the high end. The cycles happen so fast that if there are some cancellations, they're hard to hear. That's why you really need to use your ears and not your eyes for this part. Now, phase issues happen in the low end, and this is where we get to the why phase issues happen. So because the cycles happen slower, there's an easier chance for parts of the waveform to cancel each other out in a really big way and make it actually noticeable and audible, and you can hear the weaker sound that is produced. And this is just how audio works, not just in speakers, but also in rooms. Some rooms, based on the dimensions and how things are in that room, you could have buildups, you could have holes, audio dropouts, lots of things happen. This is just how audio works. You're going to have cancellations and phase. This is why you need to tune your rooms, tune your speakers. This is why people use Sonarworks. Anyways, but that's getting a little off topic. Let me show you some examples of polarity and phase, and what you can do with them and what can happen. All right, let's get into it. So what you see here is a low frequency sine wave, zoomed in so you can see the cycles. All right, I have copied this track and inverted the polarity, or flipped the phase. And you can see that the phase of this clip is completely flipped or inverted. The polarity has been inverted. I know, some confusion with terminology. But yes, as you can see, because it's a sine wave, the phase is the same through each cycle. So when the polarity is flipped, it's also flipping the phase of the waveform too, completely upside down. Anyway, so this is what it looks like when the polarity has been flipped. Now let's play this track above it by itself, and then I'm going to bring this track in. What do you think is going to happen? All right, so let's listen to the sine wave, and then I'll unmute this track here, and we'll see what happens. Complete silence. Can you believe that? Look, both these tracks are playing, but it's producing no sound up here or down on the master. Look at that. It's because this track is telling the speaker to do exactly the opposite that this track is. Now let's look at an example of phase alignment issues and what that can cause with very same or similar sounds. So as you can see here, I have two copies of the exact same waveform here. Let's play it and see what it sounds like together. Two tracks just doubled in volume, about 6 decibels louder in volume. Okay, so now what happens if we play these two tracks together and I slowly offset this track? Let's listen to see what happens. Look how much sound is coming out of the master track and off the group that they're both coming into. But look how much sound each one of them is producing. It should be a lot more sound. It should be through the roof. But it's not, because we have some parts of the waveform canceling each other out. As you can see, this could be a huge problem for some tracks, and it might not be a problem for other tracks. This is really material dependent and up to the producer, artist, or mix engineer, whatever your title may be. These two audio examples demonstrate what inverting the polarity and offsetting phase alignment can do to your tracks. Anyway, I hope this video helps. Thanks for watching, guys. Mr. Audio, out.